In this video we are going to see a before test and after test. So far we have covered the before method, before class, after method and after class, and now in this video we are going to see how a before test will helpful and how after test will be helpful and how, when they execute. Okay, let's jump on to a program. Okay, I'll consider these three classes. We have a subclass, superclass. Instead of calling it as a sub and super, let me make it as class 1. This is going to be a class 2. Okay, and we have one base class. When we construct a TestNG XML with this particular with this package, this was our TestNG XML. Since we have updated the class names, I'm changing the XML. Okay, let's run this and see how this works. Okay, fine. Now moving on to a before test and after test. Let me add a before test and after test in the base class. This is our base class. I'm going to copy the before class, after class. Let me put it here. I'm going to name this as a before test, after test. Okay, let me update the annotation also. Before test and after test. Okay, this before test and after test will be executing once before you run the test, and once the test gets completed, the after test will execute. Don't get confused with the before method and a before test. This before test will be executed before executing this particular test. In the TestNG XML, this is a test. Okay, a before test annotation will execute before starting this particular test. Let it be n number of classes. The before test will execute only once before completing this particular whole functionality, and after test will execute after this. Sometimes we get confused with the before method and a before test. Why? Because that's why I've been calling this as a method annotated @test. This is a method. Don't consider this as a test case, though this particular says test runs. This is not a test as from the TestNG XML perspective. This is a method annotated with @test. The real test is this one. This is a test from the TestNG XML. You can have n number of tests inside the XML file. Now I am going to take the whole test, create another one here. Okay, let me remove this class here. Okay, I think I'm editing the wrong XML. Okay, okay, let's name this as class 1. Let's name this as class 2. Okay, I need to change the names also. You can't give the same name for two test attributes. This is my test 1, this is my test 2. Okay, now inside our suite we have two tests. The before test we defined executes here. Like let's say before test and after test. Just for your reference, I'm just putting it here. See, before test and after test. Again, the same way, this is another test. Okay, hope you understand now. I'm going to remove these lines since syntactically this is wrong. For your better understanding, before test executes here and then it goes into this class. It will execute any before class or before method, and then at the test method, method and after class, and then it executes an after test. This way, this is a test. The before test will execute before this particular test annotation, sorry, test attribute. After test will execute after the test functionality gets completed. The before method executes before every method annotated with @test, whereas before test annotation executes before the test attribute which you defined in the TestNG XML. Try to understand the concept here. It is an interview question also. Okay, let me remove this now. Hope you understand the concept. Okay, now I'm going to run this. Now, okay, before we run this scenario and see the output, let us write what would be our expected output and then we can compare. What's going to be our output? Let us consider this test first. First thing, before test will execute, and when we go into this class, since this particular class 1 extends a base class is having a before class and before method. Okay, remember that before class will execute and then before test and then your test1, and after, sorry, this should be before method, after method, after class, after test. This is for the first test, and for this particular second test, again the similar output here should be the second test from the second class. Okay, let's run this and see whether we get the same output or not. See, the first thing, the before test, before class, before method. As we can see, a before test, before class and before method, the test case executed, test is executed, and then again after method, after class and after test, after method, after class and after test. The same way, the before test, before class, before method, second test, after method, after class and after test executed. Okay, this is how you can define a before test and after test annotations. And when you have this before test and after test annotation or before class and after class, try to run from the TestNG XML. Sometimes you define multiple classes and a before and after classes at one specific class, and when you trigger from the class locally, when you run it as a TestNG test, by giving a right click on a class, it will not consider all the classes. Okay, always try to run from the TestNG XML if you are having a before class, a before test, or a before suite annotations. Anything apart from the before method, you try to run it from the TestNG XML. Hope you understand the concept of the before test and after test. Please feel free to comment if you have any questions. Thank you.